Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. Today's date is Monday, March 9th, 2015. I'm your host, Rob Dew, and here's a look at what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, from prison, anarchist Barrett Brown speaks of his questionable sentence. Then, any questioning of Hillary's past is labeled sexist, and the new age of drones. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
You pay to be spied on. You're like, well, nothing to hide. Your info can be used against you. The bad people want your info. What is your problem?
Normally, with the Nightly News, we start off with the biggest world earth-shaking news and work our way back to maybe like a local level or different things that we see are issues here in the United States. And this time I wanted to reverse that, and we're actually going to start off here with issues internally, specifically with political correctness and where it's gone. Now, I'm going to get into a lot of racial things here, and so bear with me as I go through a series of articles, and hopefully you will see my point at the end. But I want to start off with an article from the Daily Mail. We don't have room for racists and bigots here. Oklahoma college president calls on the SAE frat brothers to drop out as new video of racist chant emerges. President of the University of Oklahoma has condemned the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity for a racist chant that emerged this weekend and vowed to discipline the students involved, but stopped short of saying they would be expelled from the university. And this was a controversy that started due to a piece of video that's less than 20 seconds long, and it's got a whole bunch of guys on a party bus. I think there's some women in there as well. And this is what they're singing. And we're not going to play the video, but I want to actually tell you what they're singing. As one tuxedo-clad brother gleefully sings, "You can hang him from a tree, but he'll never sign with me. There will never be a N word in SAE," and stands up and waves his hands in front of a cell phone camera, attempting to stop the filming of the shameful song. So obviously despicable, distasteful, grotesque, and yes, you don't want that. And I kind of applaud the university president for taking such drastic action. One thing, however, now by closing down the fraternity house, they've actually put a black man out of a job. So they had alumni are actually attempting to raise money for a black man who's worked as the cook for the fraternity for more than 10 years. Now, by taking that action to close down the fraternity house, he's unwittingly put a black man on the street out of a job. So the cook's name is Howard, and there's a campaign that's raised more than $11,000 toward its goal of $50 to help provide support to him after he lost his job. And now the students are moving out. They have to get out by midnight tonight. You can see photos of the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity leaving, being forced to move out of their fraternity house. And I actually applaud what the president is doing. And we're going to go to a report from Jakari Jackson in 1 second, but I want to contrast this with another incident that occurred pretty much the same day. Outrageous college footballers dress in KKK robes as they make parody of Will Smith movie Bad Boys 2. And a group of college footballers have sparked outrage by dressing in Ku Klux Klan robes in a parody of the Will Smith Bad Boys movie. About 20 members of the team at Wheaton College near Chicago, Illinois, performed the skit wearing Klan-style white hoods and carrying Confederate flags. Here's the big difference, though. Here's the big difference. Most of the players involved in this were black. So the university didn't kick them out of the school. They didn't kick them out of their fraternity house, kick them off the football team. Really, all they had to do was apologize for the insensitive stuff. According to the Chicago Tribune, team captain Josh Aldrin, who's African-American, took responsibility for the skit, and a letter to the students admitted, "We made a mistake." He wrote, "As a black male, a team captain, and leader of the group that performed the skit, I should have understood that the KKK and Confederate symbols are not funny in any context." So you have kids going to school, they watch a lot of gun movies, there's violence everywhere on TV, they do this, they get expelled. You have African-American students who see this in a Bad Boys 2 movie and think it's funny, and hey, maybe we should do this as a team-building exercise, and they're absconded by their university. And then at the same time, you have white students on a bus singing a song, their fraternity is closed down, and an African-American loses his job. At the end of the day, is anybody winning or losing in these arguments? Jakari Jackson has more with this report.
This is Jakari Jackson for NoWorldOrder.com. You guys have probably seen the clip by now of the racist rant by an OU fraternity from Oklahoma. I would show you the video, but YouTube likes to pick on us and strike us down for posting stuff that's already on YouTube. But we'll put a link in the description below. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I'd like to applaud the president of Oklahoma University, because he came out and he said, we don't appreciate these racist rants. These are the actions of these individuals. We do not support or condone those individuals. And then he went a step further to shut down the fraternity. It seems like the president of a state university is more on the ball than our president of the United States. Because we see President Obama, he says, I don't support this, I don't support that, but then he doesn't really do too much about it. Example, Fast and Furious running guns into Mexico.
Listen to what Holder told a Judiciary Committee hearing on May 3rd this year.
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
Yet internal Justice Department documents show that at least 10 months before that hearing, Holder began receiving frequent memos discussing Fast and Furious. They came from the head of the National Drug Intelligence Center and Assistant Attorney General Lanny Brewer.
Well, I didn't really know too much about this. I don't support this, but I'll give the Justice Department the authorization to investigate themselves and then come up with whatever decision they find necessary. Or he says, I don't support the things that happened in Benghazi, even though we know that Ambassador Stevens was sending his communications to Mrs. Clinton months before he was murdered. Or Lois Lerner at the IRS. Well, you know, I don't know about this. I found out about this stuff on the news. And then Mrs. Lerner goes up into her testimony and she just sticks her nose up in the air and she doesn't have too much to say. So even though the president of the United States doesn't condone these things when he gets up there and speaks, he doesn't do anything to stop them even after the fact. So it seems like to me, Mr. Obama needs to enroll in a course at the University of Oklahoma where he can actually learn some responsibility and leadership skills. You can find more reports on NoWorldOrder.com.
So the only reservation I have about this is, what does this mean for free speech? And while I'm not condoning what those men on the party bus said at all, they actually do have a right to say that. They do have a right to be as despicable as they want. At the same time, the university has the right to go after them. But what this is creating a culture of more political correctness. And I'm not saying the racist stuff in particular, but this leads to a culture of everybody looking around to find a way to be divided amongst themselves. Now they've got other students that are protesting the fraternity, even though it's been shut down. And so then they have their right to speak out as well. Everybody should have a right to speak out on their issue. But when we start saying you can't say this, you can't say that, it does bring us into First Amendment issues. And that's what we have to examine. Are we going to let, some people get away with it and some people not because of the color of their skin? So can a black man say racist stuff about white people and not get in trouble? Because, technically white people have never been oppressed at all, unless, of course, you're Irish or Polish or, Lithuanian. I guess those people have been oppressed in certain instances. But that's what we have to look at, the First Amendment implications to this stuff. And then at the end of the day, only one guy is losing his job out of this, and that's the cook for the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity who happens to be African American. So there you go. Now, we have that first, our racism news of the day. And now let's look at Hillary Clinton, because when you speak out against Hillary Clinton, it doesn't matter if you like the fact that she hid her emails and she basically, it looks like, orchestrated a deal for missiles with terrorists and then helped silence the ambassador over in Libya. No, that doesn't matter. If you say anything bad about her, it's sexist. But let's get to the first part of this puzzle. This is from Trey Gowdy, the iconic picture of Hillary on her BlackBerry. We have no emails from that day. There are huge gaps. And here is a video clip of him talking about just that.
If you think to that iconic picture of her on a C-17 flying to Libya in her hand, we have no emails from that day. In fact, we have no emails from that trip. So it strains credibility to believe that if you're on your way to Libya to discuss Libyan policy, that there's not a single document that's been turned over to Congress. So there are huge gaps. And with respect to the president, it's not up to Secretary Clinton to decide what's a public record and what's not.
But the leftist PC control think media wants to put out the narrative that because you want to see the emails that Hillary Clinton was writing on her BlackBerry as she was going over to Libya or anything else that relates to Benghazi, that you're a sexist and that you're making a big deal out of nothing because only 4 Americans died and we lost a bunch of missiles. So really nothing to see here. In fact, here's the article from PrisonPlanet.tv, Paul Joseph Watson. Hillary supporters, criticism over email scandal is sexist. And the Daily KOS asserts that Republicans fear having a vagina in control of the White House. And you can read some of the tweets. I have my issues with Hillary Clinton, but GOP efforts to destroy her are uniformly petty, pathetic, and sexist. Stop being so sexist with your double standards and giving a pass to your golden boy, Jeb, which I agree. We should not be giving Jeb Bush a pass, but just because you say Hillary's bad doesn't mean Jeb's good. And people don't seem to understand that the left and right are both out there to destroy you. They're not out there to help you. They're out there to enrich themselves and their buddies. And until you get that through your thick skull, you're not going to get anywhere in this world. You're going to be fighting these petty left-right issues all day long. Let's read a couple more of these. This is not the Clintons. She is a person separate from her husband. Stop being sexist. Wait until Hillary Clinton is in charge and the racist, sexist GOP will be even worse. But obviously, someone is concerned about these statements because someone is paid for a polling firm out of Michigan to go in and ask certain specific statements to pollers in Iowa. In fact, here's the article. Team Hillary conducting secret polls to test fallout of email scandal. The Bleeding Heartland blog reports that someone is paying to test a series of negative messages about Hillary Clinton among Iowa Democrats, noting that a Michigan-based polling firm is calling households of likely voters to get their response to unflattering questions about the former First Lady. And let's read some of the sexist statements here. The poll then lists a series of statements about Hillary Clinton and asks the respondent to state whether each statement makes them more or less likely to vote for her. The statements include she was involved in the Whitewater and Travelgate scandals when Bill Clinton was president. Probably nobody remembers that. She only paid women on her staff 72 cents for every dollar earned by men. Sexist. She did not protect diplomats in Benghazi. She was unable to account for billions of dollars spent at the State Department while she was Secretary of State. The Clinton Foundation took $30 million from Middle Eastern governments. Sexist. She allowed Iran's nuclear program to advance when she was Secretary of State, and she supported Obamacare. So if you care about the office of the Secretary of State and its integrity in the world view, then I guess you're sexist if you just want to see the emails that she has. Same with Lois Lerner. She hid her emails, and people were being called sexist because they wanted to see them, and then they were destroyed. Oh, but now they're miraculously found. See how this works? Every time the government wants to hide something, it's because they're doing something bad. It's not because they forgot and they're clueless. Well, unless, of course, I guess if you're President Obama, because when he was asked about this, he had this to say that he was the most transparent administration. Still, he still believes that. So here's those clips.
When did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
The same time everybody else learned it through news reports. The policy of my administration is to encourage transparency.
Well, you say that you have the most transparent administration ever. You said it again just a couple of weeks ago.
It's true.
How does this square with that?
Well, I think that the fact that she's going to be putting them forward will allow us to make sure that people have the information they need.
So he didn't know. He learned it just when we all learned it, because he's not privy to anything that goes on in his office. He's not aware of what his cabinet is up to. I guess during Benghazi, maybe he wasn't looking at any emails either, because he didn't get any from President Clinton because she didn't have any to turn in at that time. Very interesting. Very interesting that he's now looking over my shoulder right now behind me, wondering what I'm thinking. He wants to look at all my emails, but he doesn't want you looking at his. Of course, his are all made public. And Hillary, as soon as she erases the ones that are incriminating, she's going to turn them over to the committees and let them look at them. But wait, we're not done. He also said the same thing about Fast and Furious. This guy doesn't know anything about anything. Here's this clip.
There have been problems. I heard on the news about this story that Fast and Furious, where allegedly guns were being run into Mexico, and ATF knew about it but didn't apprehend those who had sent it. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, has been very clear that he knew nothing about this. We've assigned a IG, Inspector General, to investigate it.
You know what the one thing the president does know? He knows how to vacation. He's already spent $38 million vacationing in his tenure as presidency. Wow. He surely knows how to do that. Knows how to go to Hawaii and golf and, man, take his kids to Africa, having a great time on our dime. But he doesn't know what his own employees are doing at all. But that's okay, because if you say anything about that, you're probably a racist. Yeah. Stay tuned. We're going to be back. We're going to have some drone news. We're going to talk about a door-to-door wellness check that was being conducted by the National Guard in South Carolina, and a look at how Alan Greenspan turned to the dark side. Stay tuned. It's the InfoWars Nightly News, and I'm your host, Rob Dew.
The knowledge of the ancients, tried and true, trusted herbs and extracts fused with the latest nutraceutical science. Introducing the all-new Ancient Defense Herbal Immunity Blend, crafted with over 14 key ancient herbs and extracts to supercharge and prepare your body for what experts admit is the most dangerous season of the year. We have rejected hundreds of other formulations in our quest to bring you what is simply the most powerful and comprehensive proprietary formula that we have ever created in the realm of herbal immunity. For the last 2 years, our team has been working with top doctors, nutritionists, and chemists to develop the ultimate nutraceutical formulation. Experience the benefits of combining over 14 ancient herbs and extracts with exciting new advances in nutraceutical science. For a limited time, get 25% off on this introductory offer. Visit ancientdefense.com or call 888-253-3139. ancientdefense.com. Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
The purpose of the National Guard is to set up a defensive perimeter around the country in case we were invaded. That's the basic premise of why it was invented. And each state has its own National Guard unit or units that are set up to deploy into different areas. They help out in civil emergencies, natural disasters. Those are the guys you normally call in when it's too much for the local EMS, sheriff's departments, local police forces to handle. Well, Activist Post just reported that a South Carolina National Guard, they drill door-to-door wellness checks. This is from Brandon Tuberville. On March 7, 2015, the statewide drill entitled Operation Vigilant Guard took place under the pretext of preparation for the inevitable destruction a hurricane would bring to South Carolina. According to reports in the local media, the drills are based on the premise of a landfall of a Category 4 hurricane and how they respond to get citizens' help in such an event. And one of the things they talk about, and we're going to go to a video clip of this, is that one of the areas didn't want to evacuate, probably because they're afraid of looters or afraid of the Army coming in and doing what they did like in Katrina where they were gun confiscating. And they actually go door to door and they practice wellness checks, going door to door, and they have volunteers where they walk up, and we're going to show video of this right now, where they're actually going up and saying, "Hey, sir, how you doing? We just want to see if everybody's all right." And they thank them, and it's just a great old time. But that's not what happened in Katrina. When they went door to door, they were actually confiscating firearms. So that's all this is doing, is acclimating the military to go door to door to get firearms, because that's what they're most concerned about anytime in a time of crisis, is not whether you're being safe, it's whether you have any guns and can we get them. And if not, we're going to put you on the ground. We've played reports on this. We've had callers call in and say they were part of these operations where they would go bang on people's doors. "Hey, we're here to help. Boom, do you have any guns?" And we're taking them. And if you gave up any resistance, you were slammed to the ground and taken away. That's what these types of drills are for. And there's a whole psyop around it. I saw this back in 2010 when I went up to Chicago for Operation Vigilant Guard. And they had Polish FBI and Polish Secret Service there, and their Polish Civil Defense Unit, Polish firefighters. They were all there, and they weren't supposed to be participating. They were only supposed to be watching. But as we captured video, which we're going to roll right now, you can actually see the Polish troops holding guns, participating in the exercises where they were killing gun owners and then rounding people up and running them through decontamination units. This is what goes on with the National Guard. This is what they're being trained to do. They're being trained to be vestiges of the federal government and to do what the federal government says because they work in conjunction with FEMA, and it's all under Homeland Security. So they're not questioning these orders. It's under the guise of, oh, we're here to help. We're here to help. Here's the video of the guy from the exercise saying, this is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to be going door to door, and this is why we're going to be doing it.
This is the aftermath of a hurricane that's come and struck us, and upon an evacuation notice, the subdivision of Overton, the residents chose not to leave. So we are doing a door-to-door wellness check.
Our mission here today is to support South Carolina State Guard as well as local agencies, being the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office as well as Fire Department and EMS.
So you heard from the first public servant, we're going to do door-to-door wellness checks, and then it cuts to a guy from the actual Army. So actual Army was there participating with the National Guard, and that's how it's done. They don't talk about the Army and any of the things, but Army is there, real Army is there. And why do we need the real Army in disaster relief? That's not their job. The real Army's job is to go create a disaster somewhere else and to go fish out the bad guys in other countries, not be operating here in the homeland, as they say it. But, you know, they're running the exercises. I went to one in 2010. 2015, they're still doing them. They're probably doing them in your area. In fact, we got a video and photos sent to us from a listener who first talked about the Guardian Center, which is a kind of doomsday Disneyland. And now he's noticing pickup of activity there. Here's the actual video of helicopters flying information, Black Hawk helicopters, the elusive black helicopter flying over his house and going to other locations. And here they come, right over his house, in formation. What are they preparing for? I wonder. And do they need to be doing these in the homeland? Is this what we're going to be subject to? There's the CNN article, take a tour of Doomsday Disneyland. And it's basically a mock city where they set up and pretend people are burning cars and trying to hit police. And so they have to grab people and throw them in the backs of cars. It's crazy stuff that they're doing, that they're training these people for. But as Alex Jones pointed out in his first 3 Police State movies and then in Police State 4, which I helped work on and helped direct, that this is an ongoing operation. This is to acclimate the armed forces to go into domestic populations and take people under their care. That's right. Is that what you want in a time of crisis? The government there to help you? Because they're not really going to help you. They're going to shove you into a stadium and not let you leave. Just go look at Hurricane Katrina and what happened in the Superdome. Now let's move. I got an Alan Greenspan article here. Here's the architect of what we have going on. Worked under 4 different presidents. Insider, Alan Greenspan warns of explosive inflation, tinderbox looking for a spark. According to Greenspan, something big is coming. Last month, it was revealed that the former Federal Reserve Chairman, Alan Greenspan, the architect of U.S. monetary policy under 4 presidents, is anticipating a significant market event as a result of trillions of dollars that have been pumped into the system over the last several years. According to Greenspan, something big is coming. Yeah, now he's spilling the beans because he's not in office. In fact, he's a couple people removed. There was Ben Bernanke after him, and now we have Janet Yellen. It looks like she should probably be in the kitchen baking cookies. Sexist remark, I know. But do we really want that lady in charge of policy who won't admit to anything? In fact, we have a report from John Bound showing how Greenspan went from being a true capitalist, a free market capitalist, into what he is today, and his disciples that soon followed.
Most people still lack the courage to realize that capitalism, real, free, uncontrolled, unregulated, laissez-faire capitalism, not the mongrel mixed economy we have today, was the ideal social system which mankind had almost achieved, then lost. They still lack the courage to realize that if justice, progress, abundance, peace, safety, and goodwill are their social goals, then capitalism is the ideal to live, work, and fight for. The truth which they refuse to face and to admit is that the world conflict of today is the last stage of the struggle between capitalism and socialism, and that the whole world knows it. The most helplessly ignorant shopkeeper on any corner of any street on earth knows it,
Alan Greenspan, a stalwart of this basic reality, was a full-blown laissez-faire capitalist. A direct disciple of Ayn Rand's objectivist fundamental philosophy, he was very close with Rand, even inviting her to his swearing-in to Gerald Ford's Council of Economic Advisors.
Raindrops kept falling on their heads as Gerald and Betty Ford arrived in Austria. And President Ford kept falling on his head, first in Salzburg in front of Austrian Chancellor Kreisky.
Under the Ford administration, Vice President Nelson Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Foundation were wielding catastrophic policies at home and abroad, seizing control of international banking, Latin America, world food production, and dominating the United Nations. The country went from bad to worse as we entered the steepest recession since World War II. In a world of stagflation, Greenspan, Ayn Rand's economic Jedi, quietly joined the dark side.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, God.
His oversight on tax cuts and Social Security privatization were largely blamed as the catalyst that created the subprime mortgage crisis.
But my suggestion is it's not so much that we should anticipate a problem, that the problem is already created by all the inflation of the past 12 years, and that we have generated this financial bubble worldwide, and that we have to anticipate in that. And when this comes back, we're going to have a big problem, and you have to deal with it.
It's by no means clear, for example, that one can trace the increase in money supply, which presumably has not reflected itself in CPI, into stock values. I mean, a lot of people say it's happening, and a lot of people assume that's what it is. But the evidence is not clear by any means.
But you said the Enron decline is an effective illustration of the vulnerability of a firm whose market value largely rests on capitalized reputation with very little, if no, physical assets. That's exactly what our monetary system is all about. And that's why I believe the dollar is vulnerable. We in Congress do not have a responsibility to run Enron. Some other government has a responsibility to deal with fraud. We have a responsibility to the dollar. And I think that's what we fail so often to address around here.
What I was mentioning in the speech that you were referring to is the fact that there is some evidence that we're learning that lesson, learning how to manage a fiat currency. I've always had some considerable skepticism about whether that in the long run can succeed, but I must say to you the evidence of recent decades is that it has been succeeding. Whether that continues is a forecast which I can't really project on. Where we need to be transparent and indicate what we are doing, we do so, and we do so except in those areas where it, as I mentioned to you previously, inhibits the ability to actually function as a central bank.
In 2004, Greenspan gave the U.S. taxpayer the false impression the Fed is beholden to Congress.
The power that we have is all granted by you. We don't have any capability whatsoever to do anything without the agreement or even the acquiescence of the Congress of the United States. We recognize that, and one of the reasons I'm here today is to endeavor to convey why we are doing what we are doing. And I will continue to do that, and I'm sure that all of my colleagues are fully aware of the responsibility that the Congress has given us, and I trust that we adhere to principles of the Constitution of the United States more so than one would ordinarily do.
And I agree with you. The responsibility is here in the Congress.
4 years later, after he left the Fed, he admitted that the Fed calls all the shots.
First of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
His replacement, Ben Bernanke, echoed this sentiment and its campaign of worthless paper versus the invulnerable commodity, gold.
You know, the price of gold today is $1,580. The dollar during these last 3 years was devalued almost 50%. When you wake up in the morning, do you care about the price of gold?
Well, I pay attention to the price of gold, but I think it reflects a lot of things. It reflects global uncertainties. I think the reason people hold gold is as a protection against what we call tail risk, really, really bad outcomes. And to the extent that the last few years have made people more worried about the potential of a major crisis than they have gold as a protection.
Do you think gold is money?
No.
It's not money. Even if it had been money for 6,000 years, somebody reversed that and eliminated that economic law.
Well, it's an asset. I mean, it's the same. Would you say Treasury bills are money? I don't think they're money either, but they're a financial asset.
Why do central banks hold it?
Well, it's a form of reserves.
Why don't they hold diamonds?
Well, it's tradition, long-term tradition.
Well, some people still think it's money. I yield back. My time is up. Thank you.
Ben Bernanke's successor, Janet Yellen, Federal Reserve boss, has plunked herself down as the face of the private cartel of banksters masquerading as a federal government agency.
Are we still a capitalist democracy, or have we gone over into an oligarchic form of society in which incredible economic and political power now rests with the billionaire class?
I don't know what to call our system or how to, I prefer not to give labels, but there's no question that we've had a trend toward growing inequality.
We're still in a position where we can't argue that we're extremely overvalued in the marketplace. If we get leveraged types of toxic assets, we have a very serious problem, as 2008 and 1929 showed us.
Now, the Wall Street Journal reports the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, once the most feared banking regulator on Wall Street, has lost power in a behind-the-scenes reorganization at the nation's central bank. The Fed's Center of Regulatory Authority is now a little-known committee run by Fed Governor Daniel Tarullo, which is calling the shots and oversight of banking titans such as Goldman Sachs Group and Citigroup. The new structure was enshrined in a previously undisclosed paper written in 2010 known as the Triangle Document. Under the new system, Washington is at the center of bank supervision, exercising control over the Fed's 12 reserve banks, much as the State Department exerts control over embassies. The power shift initiated after the financial crisis and slowly put in place over the past 5 years is more than a bureaucratic change. It influences how the biggest banks on Wall Street are overseen and has begun to affect regulation in unanticipated ways across the Fed system. John Bound for Infowars.com.
And it's not just military drones that you need to worry about and who they're killing. We have a whole domestic drone program that's coming here, and we've got drones outfitted with tasers and pepper spray bullets and shotguns. In fact, Alex's son Rex produced this report about drones and talking about all the different implications they have here domestically. Here's that report, and then we're going to go to break, and we'll be back with an interview from today's show of Barrett Brown, basically eviscerating the government, a self-proclaimed anarchist who's speaking out from jail. Stay tuned. It's the InfoWars Nightly News.
Hi, I'm Rex Jones, and this is a report about drones. What are drones? What are their uses in today's society? Will they make humanity obsolete compared to the new age of robotics and computer chips of tomorrow? What exactly is a civilian drone? A civilian drone is a drone that won't attack you, spy on you, or tase you in any way, shape, or form. These civilian drones normally go for a non-threatening look and style and approach, like this little thing over here. They're used in filming, photography, and just old plain recreational fun. In the media, drones are becoming more and more popular. Using drones in films is actually one of the #1 new filmmakers trends that is going on in the USA today. Later, we're going to have an expert veteran drone operator come on the show and have him explain to us all the little quirks and kinks that these drones have to offer. Before we go to our expert, I would just like to explain to you a few facts about drones. A drone, as Wikipedia and Webster describe it, is an unmanned aircraft or ship guided by remote control or onboard computer. When operating a drone, the owner must have a direct line of sight. The direct line of sight allows the owner of the drone to fly it safely and to make sure he does not get disoriented. Now let's take a look at the job market. With more and more drones being spat out of factories, the jobs are opening up. Amazon is looking for drone pilots to drop gifts off at people's houses. And all sorts of other companies are lining up and making sure they hire for new drone operators. So hey, if you're a hobbyist, you just got a job. Now that we've covered the basics of drones, let's go to a real expert. I would like to introduce you to Gerard of I Am Aerial. How does a drone work?
Surprisingly, the technology of drones is a lot like cell phones. Basically, cell phones have a GPS. They have what they call an IMU, which tells you its orientation. They have a compass. So basically, these are the same kind of things that you find in a drone, a GPS internally. You'll have a compass, exactly. Here you'll have a place where you can attach your camera. So really, the technology is very similar to a cell phone.
When I'm looking at this is a battery, right?
Yep.
So what makes this so different than the average Duracell D or AA battery you'd buy at Target?
First of all, it's a lithium polymer battery, and it's very light and it's very high voltage. So it gives these guys a lot of thrust and gets them up in the air and flying for a good amount of time.
Amazon is looking at hiring ex-military personnel to fly drones and deliver packages to their customers. How do you feel about that, and what are some problems there?
Well, I think it's a really neat concept. I think a lot of things need to be figured out as far as allowing these drones to travel through cities and buildings, and just being very careful and mindful of where these things go, especially when you lose sight of them. And that's a big thing with flying drones, that you always want to have line of sight.
What happens when a drone gets out of control? Like, take this one article, for example. Drone owner located after device lands in family's backyard. There's some obvious concerns about privacy there.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a very unfortunate case, and it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes if the battery runs out or there's some pilot error, the drone will fly away. And fortunately, with a lot of these systems, it's built in what they call return to home. So if, for example, with this remote, if I just power it off, the drone knows to automatically come back to the point where I launched it from, because it's locked in by the GPS.
The government has started to put kill switches into these drones to where it's in the firmware to restrict drone usage in certain areas. If I was flying this drone near the White House or any other top secret government area, it would immediately fall out of the sky or just return to home.
The most important thing, I think it's a safety issue. And for example, if you try to fly these drones within 5 miles of an airport, you can literally be flying and it's almost like it hits a brick wall and it will just not go into that airspace. And it's designed for a reason, right? We don't want drones in the airspace of planes and all that kind of stuff.
But the problem with that is that when we come out with, like, how Google's always talking about smart cars and smart planes that will self-drive.
Right.
The problem is, what would happen if the firmware was in those as well? And one day, if it was in a computer chip that could be implanted into humans. So there's concerns there about the government regulating everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gerard, it was great to have you here.
Thank you, Rex. Appreciate it.
In this chilling commercial put out by the Pennsylvania Tax Committee, they brag about how they might use drones to track us and spy on us. They claim that they would only use it on tax cheats, but what if you were a government dissident?
It's easy. Pay online by June 18th, and we'll skip your penalty and take half off your interest. Because, Tom, We do know who you are.
Now that we're done with consumer drones, it's time to move on to military and law enforcement drones. These drones go from tiny nano spy drones that they're using in Iraq to track criminals to the giant Reaper drones, which can fire 4 Hellfire missiles raining down on villages. Let's go through a few NoWorldOrder.com articles about the drone threat today. U.S. drone kills 4 Al-Qaeda suspects, not confirmed, in Yemen. Says here, a U.S. drone killed 4 suspected Al-Qaeda militants in the northeast Yemen on Monday morning, officials and tribesmen said. I wonder how many other people got hurt by the shrapnel in the blast, because this was in a village. This was not out in the middle of nowhere. Now let's look at the law enforcement side of things. Riot control drone to shoot pepper spray bullets at protesters. How nice. For decades now, riot control has always been a government must-have. There are a lot of these riot control drones, and I want to go to another one, a DHS-funded taser drone that was launched right here in Texas. Montgomery County in Texas spent $250,000 on a taser drone that can follow a suspect and shoot 4 barbed electrodes that can be shot at a distance of 100 feet, delivering neuromuscular incapacitation to the victim. I think that this is a very proactive way to steal our rights. Well, we've learned a lot about drones today, but that's not all. Go online and be active and find more knowledge. NoWorldOrder.com isn't a bad place to start either. So, have fun. I'm Rex Jones, reporting for NoWorldOrder.com.
Another major health threat, this one in Toledo, Ohio, where everybody in the entire city has been told not to drink the water.
Ohio's governor declaring a state of emergency.
Did you know that the average person uses about 80 to 100 gallons of water at home every single day? If there's a water emergency, will you be prepared?
Panicked residents forming long lines throughout the day.
We're here at a supermarket in Toledo. You can see the shelves empty where water once was.
To stay safe and healthy during a crisis, you must have access to safe, clean water. Water which will not be available at your local grocery store.
There's a mad dash on right now to stock up on supplies.
The ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system is a must-have for every modern, independently minded household. Protect your family's safety during an emergency. Go to InfoWarsStore.com today to purchase your ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system or call 1-888-253-3139.
Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life vitamin B12 formulation. Most forms of vitamin B12 are highly processed and synthetic and could not be properly absorbed by the body. That's why for real results, so many are having to turn to painful B12 injections, which are known to have higher absorption rates. Now, InfoWarsLife.com is excited to announce that we can bring you our most bioactive, powerful form of B12 that has been developed with our exclusive perfected process. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12, methylcobalamin, the same kind used in B12 injections, and adenosylcobalamin. Secret 12 is simply taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Discover the secret. Secret 12. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
Barrett, I wanted to give you a chance to talk to the public. We talked about your comments to the judge saying that this isn't about the rule of law anymore. We now have the rule of law enforcement. Tell us what you want to tell us about your trial now that the gag order has been taken off.
Well, the first thing I should mention is that aside from what I put forth in the article for the Daily Beast about a month ago, and aside from what I'll tell you about today, the great majority of the things that people need to know about the trial are still sealed. And that should continue for about 6 months. So in addition to all the very egregious things that have happened, there's a great deal more that's still not public. Now, regarding the trial, I guess the basic lesson here is that the federal government can do whatever it wants, essentially, within the Department of Justice, within the federal justice system. That's clear from the extent of the perjury, very demonstrable perjury that occurred in this case. Again, some of which is visible, some of which can be confirmed publicly through documents, some of which is still sealed. And that's really what I've tried to convey to the judge in that the allocution I gave, is that, when you allow this perjury to occur, we're getting away from the rule of law. We're getting to a situation in which we're going through the forms. We're meeting in a nice, very pretty hardwood room with paintings, and there's a big, nice wood podium and very pretty robes and all that. But you're missing something, which is the rule of law. And to the extent the rule of law isn't there, you're going to see things like Anonymous. You're going to see things like WikiLeaks. You're going to keep seeing them until we get the rule of law.
One of the things, reading the transcript, the judge dressed down the prosecutor for not referring to you as Mr. Brown. And as you're just talking about, you got this fancy room with all the trappings and everything, but they're grinding the rule of law into the ground. And I thought, he's worried about being polite to people while he's railroading this whole process. That was amazing.
That kind of thing is very important to establishment characters in D.C. It's very important to the people who have that federal government mentality. I would have preferred him to object at the last hearing when the prosecutor asked the FBI agent, how long has Barrett Brown been an anarchist? Mm-hmm. That would have been the time to object when they started asking about my political ideology. Incidentally, this thing about me being an anarchist, which is true, that actually comes up in a couple of other documents, including the gag order when they asked for me to be gagged. Me being an anarchist was one of the reasons they cited. In one of the documents that's still sealed regarding my sentencing, they call for me to give additional prison time because I'm an anarchist and thus more likely, apparently, to commit crimes. So there's a lot of egregious things that, on an individual basis, really should have been a national story, on each given thing. Obviously, the seizure of the Declaration of Independence, in a more perfect world, would have been a major news story.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the world we're in, it didn't quite rate national coverage.
Yes, that was amazing. Tell the audience about that.
Well, among the items, and you can see this, and this is links to from my Daily Beast article, my post Cyberpunk Indentured Servitude, which you can find online. We have the list of items they seized as evidence of a crime, and it's computers, it's my notes. There's only one book they took. I have a lot of books in my apartment at the time, and the only book they took was a copy of the Declaration of Independence, just this little pocket copy.
Well, that's radical.
Never have to explain why they took it. I'm assuming it has to do something to do with the FBI memorandums a few years ago when they said, patriots, militia types, they like the Constitution, they might have a copy of the Constitution, thus having a copy of the Constitution might be evidence of a crime. I'm assuming they just sort of got it mixed up. One of those Enlightenment documents. FBI agents aren't as educated as we might expect them to be, or might hope them to be anyway. So they just grabbed it and then, never came up at the trial. Would have been, even for them, it would have been a little much to actually discuss that, in the course of the trial. So.
Well, of course, yeah, they never want us to read even the first paragraph of that when it says we create governments to establish our rights, and when they destroy our rights, we have the duty and the obligation to alter or abolish those governments. One other thing I wanted to get to, and then just you can talk, I'll let Joe ask you a question here. One of the things you mentioned at the end of the article was 2 days before your sentencing, the Department of Justice withheld from the defense team chat transcripts from Jeremy Hammond. Tell us about that.
This call is from a federal prison.
Sorry, that's one of those charming little reminders every once in a while. Yes, it actually came out 2 days before in an article by, I think, Dale Cameron, that, in fact, and this is something we had no idea of, the Department of Justice had documents that show quite demonstrably that I was not a co-conspirator in the Stratfor hack, which was a major point, of the DOJ's favor in getting me additional prison time. This claim that I was somehow a co-conspirator, and they withheld that evidence. And the evidence is now public. It was made public right before my sentencing, and this is something that, again, in a more perfect world, the judge would care about just as much as he cares about whether I'm called Mr. Brown or Barrett or Humpty Dumpty or whatever. But it just didn't quite come to his attention. Didn't quite interest him very much. It actually just goes to show that this particular case. Obviously it's inconvenient for me to be in prison, but on the other hand, we have a great example here. This whole case, the investigation, all the way to the sentencing, of how this system works. Particularly if the DOJ wants you, very much wants you to do prison time. It's a great example of how they're able to get away with these things, even in the public eye. And there's the other story here, of course, is how poorly the mainstream media does in keeping up with these things.
Absolutely.
We spoke on the phone the other day, Barrett, and you were talking about. I was asking you what you knew about the Michael Hastings, case, and how the FBI came out and said that they weren't looking into him. And you said that you believe that 99% that FBI was definitely looking into him.
Yeah, it's even aside from the other reasons they would have to look into him, it's absolutely ludicrous for them to say that, because with regards to my group, Project PM, which runs the echelon2.org website, which was really what this case was all about, they subpoenaed the IP address information for everyone who's ever contributed to that website of ours. And so these are just sort of small players within Project PM. Now, Michael Hastings, on the other hand, as I noted in a Vanity Fair article a number of years ago when he was still alive and when I was writing about him, he was instrumental when I was first creating Project PM in helping me sort of flesh out the philosophy of it. So the idea that he, who was in contact with me regarding Project PM, was never investigated regarding Project PM is absolutely 100% ludicrous. And again, that's in addition to the other reasons they and certain other organizations would have to be investigating and harassing him. He obviously did a great job. He's best known for sort of forcing McChrystal to resign a number of years ago, but really his article exposing the PSYOPs campaign used by, I believe, a two-star general in Afghanistan against visiting senators, that's something I cite constantly in my articles for The Guardian or wherever as evidence of here's what these people are willing to do even to your elected officials. And it is absolutely ludicrous that their claim that they weren't investigating. They absolutely were, almost certainly on several different issues.
I know we don't have much time, Barrett, before we get cut off, but Paul Joseph Watson is in the UK, and he's got a quick question for you. Paul?
Call is from a federal prison.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Barrett, obviously one of the charges is the fact that he merely provided a link to the Stratfor email leaks. What kind of precedent does that create for web publishers, for activists going forward?
Well, it means that the federal government now has a vastly expanded toolkit by which to come after anyone that they wanted to come after to begin with, whether or not they've actually committed a crime. By criminalizing the act of linking, especially in my case when you don't even know what you're linking to, and had no interest or use for in this case, it turned out to be credit card numbers in addition to other information that I ended up linking to, which was already public. That sets a terrible precedent by which journalists, researchers are now at risk. And of course, there are some journalists and researchers who are a danger to the government, and especially the DOJ. And thus, the DOJ now has one more option by which to come after them. Quinn Norton, who writes for Wired and who testified at my hearing, she explained a few days afterwards, after this decision, that she was going to stop doing security reporting now. It's too dangerous. She told this to the judge. The judge at my hearing said, I'm going to go ahead and hit him with this additional year in prison for the linking. I don't think it's going to be a concern to journalists, which is bizarre because, of course, journalists have been expressing concern about those charges ever since they were made 2 years ago. And even right after my sentencing, there was a number of articles in U.S. News and World Report, Columbia Journalism Review, The Intercept, again, expressing concern about this. So the judge is not a brilliant flower of jurisprudence or anything, really. He's just sort of a puppet of the DOJ. Unfortunately, not a bad guy, just doesn't know what he's doing. And so, again, alas, that's that situation we're in now. Now, hopefully something will come of this in the case in general. Hopefully people will make use of what's happened in my case to bring some attention to the mainstream. Because, again, this affects journalists. And, when you start coming after journalists, then you have the potential to get journalists' attention.
Well,
so
especially when you're quoting somebody like a Fox News contributor.
Sorry?
Especially when you're quoting someone, Fox News contributor, and then they use that against you, that quote.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, the number one most bizarre thing in a comedy of bizarre errors. The fact that a Fox News commentator went on television and talks about how we should murder Julian Assange. Mm-hmm. I quoted that on my Twitter account. And of course, Julian Assange is someone who I respect and he respects me. We have sort of an association. That ended up my indictment as if it was something that I said or approved of. And even after we pointed out, in a filing that, this Barrett Brown didn't say this. This is some other guy that Barrett Brown obviously wouldn't get along with saying it. The prosecution stuck with it instead of saying, "Oh, this is a mistake," or "You're right." They stuck with it and said, "Yes, he's promoting this quote," which is, again, it really raises the question of if it's a terrible quote that even promoting gets you indicted, then how come the guy who said it on national television hasn't been indicted? And the answer, of course, is because the guy on Fox News is not a danger to the DOJ. He, like commentators are both left and right, is an establishment character on his own. He dislikes WikiLeaks, dislikes sort of anti-government things of that nature, and thus will never get that kind of indictment. And that goes into another big problem here is the selectivity, the picking and choosing the DOJ can do and has done, as we exposed, as we showed with the H.B. Gary and Team Themis scandal in 2011. The picking and choosing they can do, who they prosecute under these very broad statutes. In addition to that, the bizarre sort of underground concierge service the DOJ seems to provide to certain companies that happen to have common enemies with them. That's something I don't think we have time to get into, but if people want to go to echelon2.org, they'll see some of the research that really kicked off this trend, that really sort of forced the DOJ to come after me. The research that Anonymous and my to illegal activity by the DOJ in certain companies, and that's really what this is all about. It's a whole other story. We're about to be cut off in about a minute or so. Do you have any final questions?
Just final comments about where you go from now. Do you have a appeal process that is coming through because of all these different things that are going to be coming to light in about 6 months?
Unfortunately, we gave up our right to appeal when we pled, which was, and then us having done that, the DOJ knew that they could now start violating the law over and over again about it. So, unfortunately, no. So we'll see what happens in 6 months. What we're playing now is sort of an information game. They've had their shot at me. Now I get my shot at them via the media. So that will develop over the next 6 months, and so people should stay tuned, I suppose.
Well, so sorry that this happened to you, but please keep us informed, especially after they unseal these records that show the different ways that they played with the information in your trial.
Yeah, and people can follow this at our Twitter.
I think they just cut him off. I'll give that to you. And his Twitter account is twitter.com/FreeBarrett. That's FreeBarrett_. He also has on Facebook.com Free Barrett Brown. And of course, they disconnected it, just automatically disconnects him on a certain amount of time. Again, if you want to follow this on Twitter, what he was about to give you was FreeBarrett_, and then the Facebook account Free Barrett Brown. And also echelon2.org, ECHELON, the number 2.org.
So that was some very explosive and incendiary statements from Barrett Brown. He thinks for a fact that the FBI were investigating Michael Hastings. He's 99% sure. And then the way he's being railroaded by the government seems to be, and the judges involved in this case seem to be more concerned with how he's referred to in the court than how they're taking the fact that he just republished a tweet and calling him the terrorist and the one that should be under investigation. Totally crazy, totally ludicrous. But we're going to have more from Barrett in the coming weeks. He's got a direct line of communication with Joe Biggs. So that's it for our show tonight. If you are watching this on YouTube, please consider becoming a member of PrisonPlanet.tv. It's your subscription out there that helps pay for this studio, sending our reporters out. We just sent them to Chicago to brave the cold and uncover the Chicago police black sites that are going on. See, now what's going on in our federal government has trickled down into the local police forces. Scary indeed. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join us here every weekday, 7 p.m. Central for the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm Rob Dew, and we'll see you next time.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.